On this episode of The Kevin Widdop Show, I speak to financial guru, writer, speaker and digital marketer Aly-Khan Satchu on personal branding, succeeding in Africa and how anybody can make it. Today I asked Ali about the transition from London city slicker trader to personal branding superstar, writer, author and financial guru in Kenya.
You know, I'd been in the city until I turned 40 and I'd been looking for a change. So I'd come back home, I was yearning for a change and I didn't know how that change was going to happen. And it all sort of, it's at times I look at it and think, wow, it's quite planned, but it was never, nothing was planned. Things happened accidentally. I wrote my book, which had this extraordinarily long title, you know, the Kenyan economy and this and that. And I met somebody, Esther Vasaris, who was known as Mama Tab. She lit up Nairobi, was a very dark city. And then Esther, by selling adverts on the lamppost, managed to light up the city. And she said to me, Aly-Khan, everyone wants to be rich in Kenya. And I thought to myself, she has a point, and why not? And I remember somebody from an American organization saying, Aly-Khan, why have you called your company Rich Management? Africa's so poor. So it was actually a little bit counterintuitive as well. I think it's a rich continent, and I wanted to play to that. So it was all accidental how the branding happened. I've got to thank Esther for that. And I think, you know, if I look back at my career in the city, I was always sort of open to people. I found that ideas can come from anywhere. They're not necessarily going to come from the best paid person in a company. Yeah. Could be, you know, your intern. It could be somebody you've met in the street. So I've had quite an open view, and I think it worked. People like that. And in terms of, you know, the brand, as I said, it sort of just happened.
Organic.
Or it was very organic, and I think it was a mixture of circumstances. Right. There was, you know, this is a hotbed of journalism, for example. Yeah. A lot of the international media is here, and there was a gap. There weren't many people they could go and speak to, and I sort of had an open door policy. And my theory was, you know, to get 3 minutes on Al Jazeera was priceless, and if I could get it, eventually it would convert, it would monetize. Share of voice is what people call it, I think, and I was sure that would happen. So, you know, I kept that open door policy. I got to know people, and that gave me a lot of visibility.
How does someone strike a balance between being admired by young and upcoming entrepreneurs and high-level business people and CEOs?
You know, I got lucky. I did this experiment with a business club. And that took off, and President Museveni sort of decided to come and visit. So I got that once a month interaction with lots of people, and I just found, you know, I wouldn't say I'm a classic mentor, but I'm a listener, and if I can help, I'll try and help. And I found it very invigorating to deal with the Kenyan youth at this forum. So I think, you know, I've always come from a background where my mother told me that we're all born equal, so I don't have any hang-ups with people. You know, for example, when I was in South Africa, I was really struck by how people were relating to each other. Yeah. And I think here in Nairobi, thankfully, it's very, very cosmopolitan like that. So whether it was natural or not, it was there. And I think people felt good about that fact. You know, they didn't feel I was being too aloof. But you know, I feel able to navigate both sides. You know, what people would call the high and mighty. Of course, I enjoy the company. You know, to have Madame Lagarde at my business club and to be hearing what she's got to say, or President Kagame. You know, these are totemic individuals, and they are interesting and fascinating as well. But just as fascinating is a very smart 18 to 23-year-old who's making their career, and they're coming to you for advice. I'm as engaged with somebody like that.
A lot of high performers have daily personal habits and traits. What are yours?
My first job was in the city, and I had to get to my desk at 7 a.m. Yeah. I've always woken up at around 5. And then, my daily ritual is to get up around 5, to find out what's happened in the world in that sort of 15 or 20 minutes whilst I'm making a cup of coffee. And so that's where my day has started. So it's always started early. Mm-hmm. I would say that's I drink a lot of coffee. Yeah. I tend to work from, I tend to be at my desk before 7, and then look to leave around 5:36. I think now what I do is I have a number of different businesses. So it's a question of how I allocate my time. Yeah. Slightly different when you're in the city. You're running a trading business. You know how you're allocating your time. Here, I've had to become more entrepreneurial, and it's been an interesting journey, of discovery about myself, about the market here, about how to create a business, and how to get paid for it as well.
Right. Yeah.
That's the difference. That's always a challenge.
That's always key. Life and online branding is all about standing out from the crowd. How does someone who doesn't have a brand become an influencer?
Well, I think, if you're at that age, first of all, the idea. You've got to have a good idea, right? And you can stand out from the crowd, but if you haven't got something, you're not going to maintain that for long. So I think first thing is, I believe you create excellence in yourself, and you create excellence in something you're interested in. So, if you're engaged in it and you're passionate about something, that also helps you stand out, because you become more knowledgeable, you're somebody people want to get to. So create that sort of sense of excellence, be passionate. And I think what I find is with those two ingredients, you create serendipity, you create luck, you find yourself in situations where you can potentially leverage that. So I would say those are the 3 main components about trying to stand out. What I find, there are lots of young people with very bright ideas running around this city. And what I found is that they need a sense of business 101. You've got a great idea, somebody's giving you some money, they want some shares in your business. That is a trade-off that you're going to have to do. You can't go on forever running around with your briefcase. You've got to make a move. And what I find is quite a few people, lots of great ideas, but stalling, right? Not making the next move, stuck because execution. They can't believe that their idea is worth anything. In fact, that's why they're not executing. Otherwise, they would. They would take $20,000, $30,000, which gets them to the next stage, give up a little bit of their company, but move on. And what I found, this might be personal, but I found too many people have walked in here, great ideas, but then, oh no, I can't do it. And you're saying, well, why are you here? Yeah. What are we talking about? We're all in commerce. So I think from Kenyan entrepreneurialism to really deliver, that little thing has got to happen.
If I'm a young African living in Nairobi right now or anywhere across Africa, and all I have is an access to a mobile phone, what can I do to start building my brand?
That's the great democratizing force in this country, right? And let's make no mistake about that. That is your lifeline to the world. And how you deal with that is going to be key. And you can deal with it, and it can make you a living. And you've just got to work out how to do it. And, when people ask me, oh, I'm a young Kenyan, and go back one generation and ask yourself, what opportunities did your parents have? And what opportunities do you have? And you have a whole smorgasbord of opportunities, and the phone and the internet is your way to it.
Aly-Khan, Satchu, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
And well done, Kevin Whittle.
And that's all for today's show. Coming up, I'm going to be speaking to some of the highest profile personalities from the worlds of sports, entertainment, society, and finance. Who would you like to see on the show? Contact me on Twitter at KWidopia, KWIDDOPIA. Who would you like to see on the show, and what question would you ask them? Thanks very much. Asante Sana.